Hi everybody, it's Judy here. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. And if you're new here, hi, welcome. My name is Judy. I make videos about indoor plants and all the tips and tricks about them. I share with you what knowledge I do have and continue to learn and grow from the knowledge that you guys leave in the comments down below. I always appreciate when you guys correct me nicely in the comments when I've given some wrong information. I appreciate that. It helps me learn more, and I really like it when you guys do that, as long as you're nice about it. Anyway, in today's video, I want to talk about how I water my indoor plants. I'm going to talk about how I water my plants, but I'm also going to talk about 3 methods altogether on how to water your indoor plants. And the first one, I'm just going to jump straight into it. The first one is the watering can method. It goes without saying, watering can, you go through and water all your plants with a watering can. Now, the information that I share in this video, it's not like the rules, it's not the way that you must do it. Everyone has their own ways of watering their plants. They are your plants. You do with them as you please and whatever suits your lifestyle. Everyone has a different pace of life. So however you water your plants needs to suit the way that you want to do it, as long as it is the right amount of watering that your plants themselves need. So again, the first method is the watering can. Just go through, water your plants. It's pretty straightforward. Sometimes I do this with some plants if I'm running really short on time. I know these plants need some type of drink, but I don't have time to do them in the shower like I normally do. So I'll go through with a quick watering can and just give them a little bit of a drink, a bit of a top up, to time me through until the next day where I will have time to take them all into the shower and give them a proper drink like I normally do, which I will talk about later on. So that's the instance where I will use the watering can method. I don't even know if you could call it a method, it's just a watering can. The reason why I don't personally go with this way of watering my plants is that I always wait until my soil, or the soil of my plant, is dry all the way through, not unless it's like an alocasia or a calathea or a prayer plant that don't like their soil to dry out completely. But as a general rule, I allow the soil to dry out completely for all my plants. And that's why I prefer not to use the watering can method, because when I do it with this, just go through with the watering can, it doesn't actually soak through the entire collection or pot of soil. It's just not enough to go through the entire pot of soil. As well as when I water my plants, or when you do water your plants, when you've let the soil completely dry through, the real proper way or ideal way of watering your plants is to wet the soil all the way through. Like, let the water soak all the way through. Make sure you get into every little corner. Sometimes you'll see bubbles come up. That's the air pockets releasing and soaking through with the water. And that way you know all the soil is getting saturated with water and draining through. That's why I don't use the watering can method generally, because it doesn't allow for that, or I would be running back and forth and filling up my watering can hundreds of times to get all of this watered. So I just find it more efficient to pop them in the shower, turn on the shower head, and just go through it like that way. The other reason why I personally don't like using the watering can method is that some of my pots have drainage holes in the bottom. I personally like to keep my plants in the nursery pot inside a cover pot which doesn't have a drainage hole. So as you can see here, that's a nursery pot within the cover pot. And there's just no kind of win-win with this. If I water it with a watering can into a pot that has a drainage hole, it will drain out onto my shelf, not unless I take it to the sink or to the shower and then water it with a watering can, when I may as well just go ahead with the shower head, which is easier. And then if I do it with the watering can method into a nursery pot that is inside a cover pot, I need to remember to go back and empty out any excess water that is drained through out as well. So just for me, it's not a very efficient way of watering my plants, especially when I have so many. Now, me saying that it's not the best way to water your plants isn't me like telling you that you're doing it wrong if you do it that way. It's just not the most ideal way for me to do it. If that's the way you want to do it, then go ahead. I'm not your real dad. I cannot and will not even assume to tell you what to do with your plants. It's just the way that I have found the easiest to water my plants in the shower. Okay, that's enough about the watering can method. I don't even know why I call it a method. It's not even a method, it's just a way of doing things, I guess. All right, the second way that you can water your plants is called bottom watering. Now, what bottom watering is, if you weren't sure, if you didn't know, is getting a vessel or a container and filling it up with water. What you will then do with your plant is grab your plant that has a drainage hole at the bottom, or take your nursery pot and it has the holes at the bottom, and just let that sit in the bowl of water. And what this will do, this method will do, is it will soak up as much water as the plant needs, and then it'll stop. Now, this method is a really good way of watering plants that don't like to get their leaves wet, like peperomia. I'm sure there are other plants that have really soft, delicate leaves that don't like their leaves to get wet. And so this is the way that I would personally water those plants, by bottom watering them. This way the whole entire base of the pot actually does get saturated or wet, because it starts to wick up all the water from within the bowl. I still don't really like having to water this way, although I will do it again for the plants that don't like their leaves getting wet or are easy to overwater. I don't like doing it this way because it's very, very time consuming. It's just, I have to remember to go in, sit it in the water, give it time to soak up, then take it out, then put in the next one. Not unless I maybe like fill up my bathtub and do it that way, but again, it's still quite time consuming. Well, I suppose if you have like 150 plants like I do, either way, whatever method you choose to water your plants, it is time consuming. So what I like to do in general for my plants is, I don't have like a watering day. I will generally go through and check through them, see if that one needs a water, and I'll go through in sections, maybe like every day or every other day, or whenever I feel like it, or whenever I see a plant that has signs of dehydration or has signs of it's drooping, it needs a drink, it needs a water. And I do it that way. I don't really have a watering schedule or a watering day. Often if I had, like, I know for me personally, I'm the kind of person, if I had a watering day, it's kind of like I have to do it, and then that makes me not want to do it even more. So I just go through my plants, keep an eye on them, put my finger in the soil. Oop, this one's actually really dry. I'm gonna let that sit in that bowl of water and wick up as much water as it needs, and then take it out and do it with the next plant that needs it. So that's another method of watering, which is called bottom watering. You may have heard this method referred to as butt chugging. It's a bit of a rude way to call it, but like it's what a lot of plant people call it as well. So that is the second way to water your plant. Now, the third way, and my personal favorite way and preferred method of watering, is in the shower. So, like I said, I allow the soil of nearly all my plants that like it that way to dry out, like bone dry, bone dry. And I have so many plants, like my attention is spread very thin, like dividing my time between a full-time job, running my business, having all these plants to take care of, and then all the other responsibilities like laundry, dishes, housework, family, friends. Like, I mean, they're not responsibilities, but they are priorities in my life. So I like to make sure that anything that I do is done in the most efficient way that works for me. For me, that is showering my plants. What I do is I gather up any plants that need watering, put them all in the shower, and turn on the shower head and close the door and forget about them for like 2 or 3 minutes. Admittedly, I have forgotten about them for like 5 minutes. I do use a lot of water. Probably should use a bit less, but my plants love it. Now, I've had some questions, people saying, when you put it in the shower, don't you feel like you are drowning your plants? Don't you feel like it's just too much water? Now, overwatering is more the act of frequency of water rather than the amount of water. Does that make sense? So for example, with the amount of water, I'll take a pot that is completely dry through, and I'll sit it in the shower, forget about it for 2 minutes, and make sure that the water has completely saturated all the areas of the pot. All the air bubbles have come up out of the soil, and I know that my plant has had a really thorough drink. Then I'll switch off the water, let it drain through completely, make sure it's not draining through and sitting in a puddle of water. Let it completely dry out, and then repeat the process. That is the amount of water. Now, what overwatering is if you do it too often when the plant actually doesn't need it. Now, plants like to dry out between waterings, like I've said so many times. It's so important to remember plants like to dry out between watering. The way you will overwater your plants or drown the plants is if you do it every single day or every other day when the soil is still wet. That is the frequency. Frequency of watering is what will actually drown your plant or overwater your plant or cause root rot in your plant. So it's important to kind of differentiate the two. Like for me, I thought it was kind of self-explanatory, and then I had a lot of questions of saying, don't you think your plant will drown? And I thought I'd better explain the difference between frequency of watering and amount of water when you actually do water. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, ask your questions in the comments and I'll try and explain it a bit better, but that's kind of the best way that I can explain how overwatering actually happens. Another way that you could actually overwater your plants is if, for example, I've done this before, I've been guilty of this before. I've put my plant in the shower and then I just needed the shower to be clear, or I needed to get it out of there. And then, for example, so I've just taken it out of the shower straight away, put it back in its cover pot, and then put it back on the shelf without letting the water drain completely through. I'll then come back to the plant in another couple days and I'll look in there, and there might be water. There isn't any in here, but there might be water sitting in the bottom of the pot. You don't want your pots to sit in puddles or in water or any water that's drained through, because what that will also do is drown your plant. That's also another way that you could overwater. Pots with soil that stay too wet for too long or is sitting in water, that could also lead to root rot and also introduce another whole host of different problems that would occur when overwatering happens with your plants. I just want to quickly also explain why showering my plants is my preferred method of watering. So the reason why I like to shower my plants is not only does it water them, it also cleans the leaves off. I take showering them as an opportunity to wash off any dust. It'll also knock off any potential pests that these plants might have. So it's also part of my routine of pest management. I thought I saw spider mites on this. I might have to put this in the shower just to wash the leaves. So that's a really good example of why I actually like to shower my plants. So it washes the leaves, it cleans off any dust, it also cleans off any potential pests. And for plants, for tropical plants like Calathea, they love for the water to get all up in there and to lubricate the brand new leaves that are trying to push through. Putting your plants in the shower also kind of mimics a tropical rainforest. It shakes the leaves of your plants and it gets them moving, it gets them shaking. And I always say, if you try and recreate the atmosphere from whence these plants naturally came from, the habitat that they naturally come from, they will love it. That's where they come from. Like, there's nothing, like we bring nature into our home, but they actually come from outside. So outside there is sun, there's light, there is warmth, there is wind, there is rain. So if we can replicate these elements in our home for our plants, they will love us for it. They will be so happy, and that's why I always say it's important to have airflow. I'm a little bit all over the place here, but another thing that I like to do when I have my plants, when I watered my plants in the shower, obviously they come out with their leaves wet. So when I've let them drain through in the shower, I bring them back out, and when I put them back in their spot that they live, if there's not a lot of airflow, for example, happening in a corner here, for example, if I have a plant that belongs there and I've just watered it in the shower, there's not a lot of airflow that goes through that corner because I don't have a window there. And so I always make sure that the plant leaves are actually dried off before they go back in that space where there is not a lot of airflow. Sometimes I'll turn on my wall unit and just have the fan on high, and any plants that I've just taken out of the shower, I sit them in underneath the fan and just let the leaves kind of dry off before I put them back in the corner. The reason why I allow this airflow to move through the leaves before putting them back and letting the leaves kind of dry off is that I don't like the leaves to sit too wet for too long, because then that actually introduces bacterial growth, fungal growth. If you see like little yellow spots with little brown circles around those spots, that is the beginning of a fungal growth. And it could also be caused by having the leaves sit too wet for too long. They just need airflow. They need airflow. There's no other way to say it, I guess. Oh, also, when I water my plants in the shower, I also take that as an opportunity to fertilize them. So when I use the shower head, obviously, to soak in all the soil, make sure all the air pockets and bubbles are out of the soil, everything's saturated all the way through. Then I will go through with my watering can with a mixed solution of fertilizer. You can use whatever fertilizer that you like to use for your plants, and go through all the plants in the shower, fertilize them, feed them, and let that drain through. So the reason why I do that when I have just watered them in the shower is to make sure that the soil is actually wet when I go through with the fertilizer. So the water kind of primes the soil for the feed, for the fertilizer. It ensures that it disperses evenly throughout the whole pot, throughout the whole plant in the soil, as opposed to just going through with the watering can and fertilizing it without showering them first. There's the danger if you haven't mixed your fertilizer properly, it could burn the roots, it could burn the leaves, because it didn't have that pre-wetting of the soil before going in with the fertilizer. I hope that makes sense. I actually don't know if that makes sense at all. I feel like if I tried to explain it any further, I'd just be saying a whole lot of words that are the same over and over. So I hope that does make sense. And if it doesn't, I'm sorry. The last thing that I do when I shower my plants is once I have finished with the showering, I'll go in with a spray of neem oil. Neem oil or pest eco oil. Whenever I say neem oil, I mean like one or the other. I personally use pest eco oil because I found it to be extremely effective for me so far, and it's much cheaper than neem oil as well. I go through with a spray of this eco oil after I finish watering. This is part of my pest management. It keeps the pests at bay, it repels them, and it also makes my leaves shiny. Hitting two birds with one stone, although I don't condone hitting birds with stones, but you know what I mean. It's a saying. Okay? It's a saying. So when I water my plants in the shower, guys, it's a whole process. It's a feeding process, it's a cleaning process, it's a pest management process, and that's why I like to do it all at once, because it's, for me, the most efficient way to water, to care, to manage my plants. It's just the easiest way. So yeah, I've gone through the 3 ways to water your plants. Take from this video what you will, and I hope it was helpful. I hope it was informational, and if you have anything else that you would like to add, please do leave it in the comments down below. I'm sure everybody will benefit from your experience. Hey! There's birds on my... I know I just said I don't recommend hitting birds with stones, but there were magpies picking at my string of pearls. I have a string of pearls hanging outside. I banished it outside because it had aphids, and the birds were picking at it. Maybe they're picking at the aphids, but they're actually destroying the plant in the process. Anyway, that's besides the point. I'm gonna end this video now. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate you chosen to spend your time here with me today. Please like the video if you did, subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye. I don't know why I'm laughing. As long as it is the way, as long as it is the proper method, as long as it is the proper watering, what am I trying to say? So if we can replicate